Hey there, and welcome to the Good Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Schwinn, local real estate agent and business owner here in town. And on this episode, I talked to Amy Potter, who comes from the SMART Coalition, and we talk about the two charter amendments on the ballot until May 6th here in the city of Marysville. So we talk about the different perspectives of why it's a thing, why it got put on there, why it's a good thing in our perspective, or at least I don't see why it's a bad thing. So follow along there. But on another note, I want to give a big shout out to my good buddy Mike King with KR Designs, who is my first official sponsor for this, who's helping me with this sign here. And if you need a sign, if you can draw it, he can cut it. There's all kinds of things I've seen him make, handrails and staircases, but primarily he does a lot of really cool signs, backlit signs. I'm sure you've driven by one. If you need help with that, I'll be linking Mike moving forward, so get a hold of Mike. But real quickly, before I ramble too much longer, if you're not familiar with the Good Stuff Podcast or Good Stuff Marysville, it's my attempt to communicate the story of Marysville in a glass half full standpoint and support the community. I've also created a spinoff of that brand, Good Stuff Media Company, where I offer to help people craft media and marketing that tells a story to promote the good stuff they've got going on to better reach their goals, whether that's my real estate clients with their listings, businesses that need media or marketing help, or just promoting the community through efforts like this. So stick around, get a hold of me if you need any help. And until then. So today I have the articulate Amy.
Hello.
So if you'd like to introduce yourself and do better than I would.
Thank you for having me, Derek. Amy Potter Grimm. I always teasingly say I'm the first house outside of city limits in Marysville. A lot of people drive by my house every day on the south side of Marysville and don't even know they've left city limits. Mm-hmm. I've gotten active in the last couple of years. It started by a development that was going in south of my property about 18 months after I moved here a little over 9 years ago. And they annexed the property into Marysville. And none of the nice people on my road could say or do anything about it because, once again, I'm the first house outside of city limits in Marysville. So I can't vote for city council. I can't do anything at planning and zoning. But I definitely am dealing with the consequences of the decisions of Marysville.
Yes, aren't we all around here? It is such an odd makeup and mix of how the boundaries get made, not even how they get made, but just what they are, what that allows people to do, be a part of, how the classifications get broken down and the ruling, like the TIFs that we'll get to, that the city can make decisions on TIFs to take from a school district that I'm a part of, but coming from an entity that I'm not a part of and can't participate in. So yes, very, very odd. There's lots of things in our world that were set up 250, 200, 100 yes. years ago that made sense then, but haven't had a big enough call to be changed so far, which
agreed.
I guess
Very
we've got
much.
Some amendments that
we do.
Is the point of what we're talking about.
Very exciting.
Would you like to
talk about the amendments?
Overview those?
Yes. Want to talk about the SMART Coalition first?
That's probably a good idea.
Let's just introduce ourselves that way. So I was approached by some alumni, grandparents, retired teachers. I think I said parents already, which I am one of them. Just citizens that are concerned about what's going on in Marysville in regards to development and zoning, and said, not sure we really like what's going on. And would you like to be part of change? And I said, well, tell me more.
What kind of change?
What kind of change, right? And what are we going to call this change? And what is the goal of this change? And truly the goal of it is just to empower citizens to have a voice in what is happening in development in Marysville and the surrounding areas in Marysville, and also to hopefully empower our schools with that. So that's where this came about. And so this brain trust of a team has worked to get 2 referendums on the ballot come May 6th. And the first one is 4.02 and the second one is 12.10.
Mm-hmm. And if you are so lucky, maybe I'll read the ballot language for you. Just kidding. Yeah. If we can make sense of it.
Yes, that is the difficult part of that.
And so that's the first one.
Yes. So 4.02, the referendum, what I guess the easiest way to talk about it now is if city council makes a change to zoning or an annexation, they vote upon it as the council. And if that vote does not go the way you would like it to, you have, when I say you, a group, a committee, a person could then make a change. And how they do that is they have to gather enough signatures of voters in the area, and they have 30 days, 30, to gather those votes.
Now,
Excuse me, the petition. They have 30 days for the petition.
to get the petition, enough signatures. On the petition. And I think this is one thing that I was a little hazy with for a while of, I thought it was like, hey, we're going to put a pause to that 30 days. It's from whenever that initial approval.
Correct.
So once the developer, the city starts the timeline, residents, a group or whoever have 30 days now to speak up before change is made. Okay.
Correct.
And that just a distinction that I thought it was like, oh, there's some period of you can throw a fit whenever you want.
Yeah. There's not a wait period. There is not a wait period. Seriously, it is, they vote on it, yes, and clock starts.
And there's 30 days there. And so
Right.
that's okay. That makes a whole lot more sense of why the amendment could be beneficial.
Yes.
To give more time for folks to go through the process.
Correct.
Make their voice heard and whatever. Okay.
Well, we gathered more than 1,000 signatures on this, and we had to do, obviously, we had a very short time for, well, we didn't have at the time to get this on to make this change. We had some time. However, if something is passed by city council, once again, zoning or annexation, that clock starts and they have 30 days to get the signatures to have the petition to be put on the ballot. So that's a short time frame if you start thinking about 900 signatures that are needed. Whew, that's a lot.
And so just a little background and why 900?
Why 900? Huh.
Or
So,
around that number.
Yes. Now, once again, I am not, although we are the smart coalition, I am not the smartest person on this. So
Disclaimer.
But I guess my understanding is that it comes back to the previous election, and it's based on that many votes. So how many voter turnout was, there's a percentage that we have to get in order to.
And it's like a regular general, whatever the
yes.
technical terminology is. Like I guess if anybody was to think of an election, that kind of election, not
Yes.
a special one.
Not a special one.
It's
So
the regular general, basically like a presidential
Correct.
would fall under that. Yeah.
Correct.
And so then whatever of the precinct, however many show up, it's a percentage of that to get enough, basically to say enough people think this is worth going after.
Right.
Yeah. And so either way, that's still quite a few. And there's quite, seems like from what my observation is the rigorous process of getting those signatures approved and running through all the technical stuff in the process. And so some of those get thrown out. And so you need more than that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's not an easy process.
Not an easy process. It's going door to door. It's doing the farmers markets, everything that we did to gather those signatures. And
Uptown
it does,
Friday nights you were at.
Yeah. It took a lot. So to get all the signatures that we needed. So same for this. It's getting it in front of the voters and letting the voters decide. So what the goal of this is to take that 30-day window and turn it into a 60-day window. So it just gives whomever it is 60 days then to get it.
And so that's primarily just for annexation, zoning change.
Correct. That's it.
Just those two things.
Just those two things.
Okay.
There is one other thing in regards to emergency. So there's a little bit of language on it. Right now, if city council, it's a kind of this is my, and once again, I'm not poli-sci major or anything like that. So just a mom here. But my understanding is when typical zoning or annexation goes before council, it has 3 meetings. The first one where they present it, the second one where citizens can actually comment on it, and then the third is when they can vote on it.
Final go around and vote.
Right. Now, if something was to happen and they said, oh, this needs to be passed on emergency, or they need to have this presented on emergency, it means that those 3 steps don't happen. And so the council could just say, oh, for whatever reason, and there's some, if you Google it, really, it's like for the health and safety, and there's like some things that criteria has to be met. But so we're saying that nothing in regards to zoning or annexation should ever be able to be passed as an emergency.
Seems to make sense to me.
So we need to go through that 3-step process or those 3 meeting process.
Well, and to me, I've said this many times before. I've been here since '93. As Jason one time said, so I like his saying of I plan to be carried out of my house feet forward. Like I don't plan to leave. I chose to stay here for a reason. Right. So I get a feeling sometimes that there's folks coming into the community to make money, to develop, to whatever, and they're making lasting changes that are going to be here for a lifetime, many lifetimes, most likely. Mm-hmm. And so that makes me a little uneasy that the place I'm going to call home, my lifestyle, my community, my, a lot of what is near and dear to me is going to be changed. Absolutely. For somebody's profit. And so another 30 days at the end of the day doesn't seem like a big deal.
No.
So.
And once again, this is zoning and annexation. So it's not like the developer's just rolling into town and saying, I'm breaking ground tomorrow, right? This has been in the process for a while. They've done a lot to get to the point where they're having to zone it or annex it in. Yeah. So.
And now some would argue, I've heard arguments that just adds another 30 days and cost and whatever. Again, if you're coming in to make money off of changing the community, I'm okay with it if it's a business and that's how we want to play. The flip side of that, exactly. But the flip side, people say, well, it's going to scare developers off and whatever.
What is the biggest thing that Marysville has? Land. We have land. We have beautiful land, and we are close proximity to Columbus. We are 10 miles outside of Columbus.
Again, I said best of both worlds. We're close to Columbus, but we got country on the other side.
That's exactly it. So,
and yes, we got lots of land. We've got. We'll get to this later, but it's not like we're falling apart, and we need all kinds of incentives to get people here. Now, I'm not an economic development master of any kind. I don't know if that's just the game you got to play is offer incentives, but it seems like.
We're giving it away. We are giving it away.
Giving it away. And I guess where I was going with the being carried out of my house feet first kind of thing, I plan to be here long enough. And I think a lot of people with that kind of mentality and sensibility to this community and staying here, I mean, especially in the last 6 months to a year, driving around and just feeling like I'm smacked in the face at all of this stuff that I'm like, whoa, that was like a field yesterday. And now it's.
Even just coming here today, I drove by some of the new apartments that are going up off of Industrial Parkway that were not there 2 weeks ago when I drove through. Yeah. And I'm like, wow.
So speaking to the speed of that,
yes,
an extra 30 days on all of them, I'm okay with. But again, outside of city limits, I don't get a voice except for this one.
I don't either. So I don't either. And lots of decisions are being made on our behalf, and we don't have a say. So let's slow it down. And I'm not saying slow down development. I love development. I'm a city girl at heart with an agricultural degree. So I grew up with a garden and neighbors and a, community pool and everything that everybody wants and all of that. And yes, I moved out here for a little bit slower, but I also loved how close it was to Columbus, so I could still get to all of the places I wanted to be.
So that's another interesting perspective that I've heard is Bob Burby put it, who gets to be the gatekeepers of shutting the door behind them.
Right.
And which I understand that logic, and I've heard it many other times. That doesn't discount people coming here, or the reason that people came here was to get small town, whatever you want to call that, but they came here for a thing. And to me, it's an easy argument that if that thing is changing, it's no longer what they came here for. So that's not accurate, appropriate. I don't know what the right term would be, but that doesn't seem true, or that it should be true either. So you have thoughts on that? Because it's like, well,
Right.
you moved here, you shouldn't have came
Right.
here. Oh, well, and I would argue, you
Right.
live in the country.
Right.
I live in the country. We bought ground when mom and dad moved here in '93.
Right.
That's a whole lot different than taking that 80 acres and putting 100 houses on it.
Correct.
Because the infrastructure pressure that comes with that is much different than one family moving in.
Right. And I have neighbors that will say that we've only helped improve the property value because of us moving in and doing the changes in the maintenance and the ongoing upkeep to that existing house that maybe wasn't showing its best. So, yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I'm not afraid of development. I think we do need development. However, we need to know the impact that that development is going to have, and we want to make sure. And I love this phrase: the development pays for itself.
There's a whole nother story there.
It pays for itself.
We'll get to that next.
Okay. But when the developers whose bottom line are only increasing and the burden of that development is getting pushed off on current citizens here in Marysville, that becomes a problem.
So, and I always feel like adding, it's kind of excuse the phrase, but sorry. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, that's the game you play. Like,
Right.
developers come, like, so I think that's one articulation, and
Yes.
they're doing their thing. I don't,
Right. I
can't
don't
blame
begrudge
somebody
them
for it. And I
to
think
be in
that's where
business.
these
Absolutely not.
conversations go too often is, and I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying in general, these
Right.
conversations get to personal hot topics and
No, years ago,
buttons.
I worked for a developer, and so I do have my real estate license, so I'm not against development once again. But like I said, there is a time and a place for it, and as long as
Exactly. And that's all I was trying to get to is doing it. There's good ways to do it, bad ways to do it. There's acceptable, unacceptable, whatever you want to say. That we're not blaming anybody for doing
right,
that's not the message I'm
Yes.
trying to get out. Is we're all trying to
agreed.
do our thing. But the question, it's just like I've talked to people in Johnstown, right? Johnstown, where
Mhm.
Intel's going. There's another one town that I always get mixed up with the same name. That like who do they want to be when they grow up into this Intel world? And I think we're in that same spot of like,
Right.
what are those questions? And so not begrudging necessarily developers for developing, but to me, I think after the pandemic, I went to a chamber function, and somebody said, guys, this stuff's coming.
Mhm.
Our
Absolutely.
opportunity is we get to manage it if we do it well. And I think that's more the point of these are the kind of things that we can do to make a voice, allow for change, to
Yes.
make sure those things are done.
This wasn't one of our, shall we say, talking points today, but I will touch on it. Planning and zoning in Marysville needs to be improved. Our codes and our planning and zoning definitely needs to be improved. Currently, it's a checklist. As long as the developer meets that checklist, everybody should go to a planning and zoning meeting. You want your eyes illuminated on what's going on, go to a planning and zoning meeting and sit there and watch and hear and listen to the application process. Because nothing against our forefathers or what's in place, but it needs to be greatly improved.
A little updated.
Because at this point, it's a checklist. Does the builder, developer meet the guidelines for the application? Check, check, check.
So not a lot of critical thinking.
Not a lot of critical thinking. They could give, so great example, met with a developer last week for a project that's coming to Marysville. And as a neighbor, I was welcomed as a neighbor. And he wanted our feedback. Great. There were a lot of people that are not happy about what this new development is going to look like. We made suggestions. They will take our suggestions under advisement. Right? So, guess what's going to happen? He's going to go to planning and zoning the end of this month, and he is going to say to 6 members of planning and zoning, I met with the neighbors. I listened to their comments. Right? Check the box. Now, is he going to make any of our suggestions or take any of our comments? No.
What were they? What was done about it?
Yeah. So not going to do any of that, but he checked a box. So he can say, I met with the neighbors. A lot of developers meet with the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go out, take them out to lunch. The reality is what they want to do. And again, our planning and zoning, our rules are so lax. You go to a Dublin meeting, planning and zoning is going to tell you exactly what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they expect. This is what they expect. So our planning and zoning can say, hey, we don't really like that. Once again, did it check the box? Box.
I was on Team Marysville years ago before it became, or kind of transitioned, so to speak, and now it's the same, a similar mission as Main Street Marysville. And I totally lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
That's what it was. In there was dilapidated buildings and trying to work on places and what can we do to improve some of the vacant houses and whatnot. Anyway, I just remember somebody saying, "What?" I can't remember if they said Marysville or Union County. I think it was Marysville. And Marysville were really good at writing letters, is what they said. And it was like they'll send letter after letter after letter and whatever, but nothing actually really happened. So I don't know if that's just kind of a flavor of how things are done around here. And there's not really, and there's more like the old Salvation Army building, like they're assessing some fines there, and so maybe there's a change of guard. And
that's good.
Like Zach's going in there, and
I agree.
And
so
anyway,
yes,
I don't know much about it, but that was just kind of an experience I had in that realm of definitely that feeling of not laying the hammer down to do some stuff.
There's not much hammering going down, and then it gets put before city council, and I love it when they say planning and zoning approved 6-0. Right, because it checked the box.
Check the box. So,
sorry, but that's a big problem in Marysville. So,
and so how, to me, like an elephant in the room for these amendments and just a lot of this topic of conversation, the pro-growth, anti-growth kind of thing. And again, for me, it's a heartfelt, like, I stayed because it wasn't what it's becoming. And so I hear a lot of people like, wow, you just, all kinds of, personal kind of things back and forth. And I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a way to phrase a question around, is that more of what this is let's say planning commission just wants growth. So check the boxes and go.
No, I don't think that that's the case, but I think that their hands are tied on what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Because the reality is, if it checks the box, then their choice is to either approve it or not approve it. And they can't, the reasoning they are not going to approve it is because it doesn't check the box. But if it actually does check the box, then it doesn't matter what their opinion is, because the reality is it's met the criteria, so it moves on.
So I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at is even if somebody was like, yeah, I might check the box, but I don't like it. I don't think this works.
And then it goes to council, and once again, planning and zoning voted on it 6-0 because it met the criteria. Now, they can put in, well, hey, we think it should be this. Hey, we think it should be that. Once again, it's just like me meeting with the developer the other day. Hey, I think those lot sizes should be bigger. Great. Thanks for your opinion.
Yeah.
But that's just it. So where, in other areas, other communities, nope. Let's put it back on planning and zoning. So let's make it real good before it gets to council.
Well, again, to me, that's really important when it comes to 30 years from now.
Right.
And again, I don't want to say anybody's not doing their job or whatever. But I think going back to the speed of things, I think is where a lot of struggle comes from of, it's going a little too fast. And for me, it's challenging to think that, especially, just like 5 points.
Right.
That's a great example.
Yes.
Like, wasn't a big deal until it was a big deal.
Right.
And so, and there's plans and there's, this, that, and the other to try to think things through and whatnot. But man, some of the parking lots that I go into, like Meyer is okay. Some of the new McDonald's by Kroger, to me, that parking lot makes no sense. 50% of people, I feel like, cut through and go the other way. So I feel like the logic that we're going at planning and development and how things are structured, I don't personally care for, or all the stuff going on, Amrine Meadows and all the stuff north. Just feels like very. I mean, I've never watched that what was that Stepford's Wives movie or whatever, but it was just about like the perfectly manicured everything in subdivisions. I just see all of this like wipe everything flat, manicure everything's perfectly manufactured, and to me, I like a little more reality and life. And so anyway, what's the long term effect of all of these things? And I see the micro things of like over engineered, but doesn't seem to practically work.
Right?
Is that going to scale up to this big time community challenges? And again,
Agreed.
Nothing against the engineers and the planners and everything, because I don't know it. I don't say I got a better way, but I just see some hardship and feel like,
yeah, is that it? Is that really what we're gonna have?
Things that just don't necessarily work.
Agreed.
So let's get back on.
Okay, so yes,
for some of these.
So 4.02, that's the first one, and it's literally just changing it for zoning and annexation, giving whomever from 30 days to 60 days. And that's what it comes down to.
More of a voice, more time to do things correctly. That's how I would phrase it.
Yes.
Any potential downsides?
None. This is not going to slow development. It's not.
Well, it'll slow it by 30 days.
30 days.
Accurately, it'll slow it by 30 days.
Right.
Or it'll stop it.
Right.
But in the grand scheme of things.
Yes, that's true.
Not too much.
Absolutely. But actually changing it from 30 to 60 days, it's going to be whatever is presented to be voted on at that point.
Yeah, and to me, anybody that's saying, well, that's going to stop development, well, then it should be. Like if that allows residents enough time to speak up.
And it's, once again, majority is speaking up and saying either we want it or we don't want it. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
So, and if that's the case, then maybe they shouldn't have been here to begin with.
That's my point. It seems to make
Agreed.
Seems to make sense to me, and happy to.
But the wording is ugly, and the word emergency is in there. But the reality is, vote yes.
I was going to say,
let's
be clear.
Yes, vote yes on 4.02.
Yes. Okay, the next one.
12.10. So this one goes into a lot more.
Okay.
12.10. So this is 12.10. Okay, this one goes into a little more detail. Currently, some things that need to be highlighted. Residential. When you say the word residential, what do you think, Eric?
Where somebody lives.
Where somebody lives, right? So that could be a condo, a house, an apartment, a twin single, a double wide, whatever, right?
Somewhere where somebody sleeps at night.
Right. So that is what's considered residential. But in the city of Marysville, that is not accurate. Apartment complexes are not considered residential dwellings. How is that, right? They're considered commercial. So that needs to be highlighted right there, right off the bat. So what we have asked...
Well, to be fair, it's outside of Marysville, too. It's not
right, outside of Marysville, too.
It's a Fannie Freddie.
Yes.
4 dwellings and up. So
yes.
It's a federal thing.
It's a federal thing. So, but it's considered commercial. So therefore, just to highlight...
It's considered commercial when it comes to, like, the rules.
Right. Correct. So this has to do with knowing that residential, commercial. Back to where we were, 12.10, and we're going to get into the weeds, but that's the hardest thing about this one. Tax increment financing. Dun, dun.
TIFs.
What is a TIF? And there are still days that I struggle with the TIF. Tax increment financing. Okay, so tax increment financing. Once again, it is diverting property taxes away from schools, libraries, services like MRDD,
yep.
To pay for cost of development infrastructure costs like roads, sewer lines, and things of that nature. So I'm going to use this as an example. Adena Point. A lot of people do not know that Adena Point, which is one of the newer subdivisions on the south side of Marysville, across from the airport, is in what's considered a TIF area. So what has happened is the developer came in years ago, which is not that long ago because those houses are not very old, and said, we would like to take this Blythe area, once again,
farm ground,
and it was farm field, right? We want to take this blighted area over here and we want to build houses. but it's going to cost a lot of money for us to build these houses and do all the infrastructure and all of that. And the city says, okay, what can we do? How can we work together? And so the developer said, how about a TIF, tax increment financing? So they said, great, we can do this. So for 30 years, a majority of those dollars, tax dollars, are diverted away from the schools, the library, and the services to pay for all of the development. Now, when I say the development, the roads and the infrastructure that was put in there. All right. But 30 years.
Just a few.
Just a couple. I don't even want to tell you how old I'm going to be in 30 years, but in 30 years. So for 30 years, those tax dollars.
Yeah. Just
please go
ahead. I was trying to get a little point to somebody else's facts. According to Google, this tax increment is then used to finance public infrastructure projects. The roads, whatever.
Roads, potholes, all of that stuff. Whatever they consider, I assume, to be infrastructure costs.
Widespread.
Yes, widespread for a variety of things. So we are, as property owners, now, in defense of all the people that live in Adena Point, probably many of them don't even know that they live in a TIF area. They are still, and
I've
once
talked
again,
to some, yeah.
Yeah, let me tell everybody right now, those people are still paying the same taxes that everybody else is paying.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
good articulation.
Yes, please. They are still paying the taxes that everybody else is paying, but majority of their taxes are being diverted away from our school district, the library, and our services.
Now, to try to help with a little clarity of understanding of kind of how things work, so to speak, or the pathway of the money, diverted. I've heard it explained, and again, technically, I don't know exactly what things fall into, but practically speaking, development comes, infrastructure needs built. What I've heard is the developer takes a loan from the city pays for the infrastructure. The taxes that are diverted go to pay the city back over 30 years, right?
Yes.
I mean, kind of a pathway of money. It's kind of more loan-ish.
Yes. And but 30 years.
So for 30 years, those taxes are going to pay off that loan. And after 30 years, schools, DD, library, see if I can figure out what that list is. I think it might be one other thing, but I can't remember. But then they will be made whole.
They'll be made whole. But that's 30 years. So you imagine if you've ever ridden behind the school bus in that neighborhood, how many kids are being educated for very little money.
And I've heard the argument, and again, numbers can say what you want them to say, and I've heard the argument that the schools haven't grown in the last 10, 15 years, which to me is pretty ridiculous to say, because Mill Valley is now at 3,000 houses, Adena Point, all the developments that have come in.
Yeah, I feel like Adena Point, it's like in their phase 5 or something like that.
And they have Skybrook and
Yes. I think we have people that are moving out, people that are moving in.
But I mean, simple math. If you have that many houses come in, not that many people can leave.
Right. And let's talk about also the apartments that are being built. So it's not just the houses. I'm sure the school has some idea. But I think that number is always.
I've heard both sides of the aisle say it's grown and the other side say it hasn't grown.
Right.
And to me, and again, I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm just saying simple math. To me, my eyes see a couple thousand more units. There's got to be more kids, because it's not like we're tearing down houses. Like, it's not one house for one house. It's more houses, not.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
I'm
going to say there's so many angles for this. I'm trying to pick the right one.
Yeah. So it's all right. So tax increment financing. So what we have proposed in this is that.
So proposed in this amendment, it's that affected school districts have to vote on, and I guess we probably need to back up and say what the state rule is on what we said earlier about I'm not in city limits, so I can't make any voice heard about them taking TIF money from the school district.
Correct. So neither one of us can say yes or no about can they take money or not. What has been presented recently.
Well, first, not to interrupt, I guess I think a helpful piece to me, it's doesn't make sense. And obviously, somebody at some point said it makes sense. A state law allows the city to take up to 75% of a TIF for 10 years without any input from the schools, right?
I believe so.
Again, fact check, but I think they can come in and take up to 75% of the property taxes for 10 years. And now I believe the schools have to vote on the remaining 25%. And for some reason, I don't get it, they have allowed for a lot of the 100% TIFs to come through.
Yes.
And so I'm just adding that in to say that's one of the hardships is it's not like the school has a voice in that 75%. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the hardest thing with all of this, especially in our school district right now. I mean, obviously, 2 failed levies. We have this third one, and heavens knows how this is going to go.
Well, and all this stuff happened in state, federal.
Oh, yes.
Vouchers. There's all kinds of
There's
stuff.
There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, and unfortunately, it's all negative, and it's impacting our school district. So what this is that we are asking for our school to have a bigger voice or to have a real voice at the table when a developer is asking for a TIF. We want the school board to have a say in yes or no, this needs to happen. We're just trying to empower them. Our tagline is we're just trying to give them a seat at the table. And that's the goal behind this entire 12.10 is we want to include commercial or apartments in so that people understand that. The city's gone in and they've said, now, why did the city do this? This is a great question. The city has said, no more TIFs for a while. Right? No more TIFs for a while. Asterisks. But wait, let me clarify that. No more residential TIFs for a while. Residential. And they know the legality of that word. So,
just
yes.
3 units or under.
Right. 3 units or under. So, no more residential TIF. So that's why we're throwing in the apartments as commercial into it because we want to include that. And then also we want the schools to have a say on if there is a TIF awarded to that developer or not. And that's the goal of 12.10 is to give them a seat at the table.
And so I've heard some challenges expressed with this. I don't know. Again, just like the first one, I'm not really sure what the challenge in giving them a seat at the table is. As long as
let's take it back to planning and zoning and meeting with the developer. Like I said, right now, a developer can go to the superintendent and say, I would like to have a meeting because we have this planned development happening. And the superintendent, bless her heart, is going to take that meeting and she's going to talk to that person. And she's probably going to come back and say, well, I'm neutral on it, right? Because, right, more kids into the school district, more homes, increased property value, increased taxes to help support, right? So that's a good thing. But the other part is then they have to educate these kids. And where are we going to put these kids in our schools that are very close to overcrowded or at capacity at this point and failing levies and all of this? So, right. So she's going to say, oh, I'm neutral about this development. And then the developer is going to go back to council and say, I met with the school. Right. She was neutral. Of course, they're going to be neutral about it. So, could they say, no, we don't like this development? No, we're overcrowded. We're having an issue. Yes, they can. We need a very strong we need a very strong school board in place so that they can, if they are presented with this, have a say and tell the city exactly what they think. So I do think that we do need that. We'll see.
Yeah, and I talked to somebody a week or two ago that said they were from Pennsylvania, I believe. He's like, I don't know what this nonsense is all about. Where I come from, the school board says, here's our budget, here's the money we need. We're going to take the money we need and move forward.
Right.
And I've always been curious why, just like the issue with DD and the levy and all that comes with that. It just seems like such a convoluted. You got a plan to ask for your money up here. You need to. Sorry, I should have shut my phone off. You did better than I did.
I was like,
no, that's mine.
That's yours.
um, you got to plan for what you're going to ask for in the levy here. You got to campaign for a levy. You got to do a levy. And it's just this long process. And then in this situation that the state, requires rates to go up and change the numbers. And then they're stuck canceling Harold Lewis, which my daughter's at and is a fantastic program. Like, what kind of screwed up system is that?
Right.
Versus, here's how we're going to operate. Now, obviously, you want some checks and balances. You don't want people to run wild and say, we need all the money we can
Yes.
and all this stuff. But it just seems, even to me, it's odd that there isn't, as smart as people are with math, it seems like there'd be some sort of, here's the formula of how we're going to fund or how we're going to whatever. And obviously there's so many factors in it. But if it's a percentage of tax, shouldn't that improve with every kid or every house or every whatever? Like, why should we? I just don't understand why we need levies. It seems like it would just kind of change as things go and increase just like taxes and whatever. And so anyway, it's an odd situation. And I kind of say that to share that I keep making the analogy with a lot of these kind of things that we're trying to see through this muddy puddle, and there's all these streams coming into the puddle that are feeding it more mud. And by the time you get one of them cleaned up, the next one muddies the puddle. And it's so hard to wrap your head around all of these things. And every time you try to have a conversation with somebody that might not think the way you think, they pull one of those muddy puddles out and say, hey, here's something else. And so anyway, I think a lot of it to me comes back to what kind of community do we want moving forward? How does that look?
Right. And the schools are a huge part of that. So absolutely. And there's been a lot of questions about, well, why are you guys putting this on? Why are you doing it right now? And the reality is because we want the schools to have a say. We are not for or against the levy. This is not about the levy. This is about just allowing the school to have a say in a TIF in the future.
Again, and I have a hard time understanding why that would be a challenging thing unless our school board is intentionally malicious and trying to screw things up, which we wouldn't have voted them in if that was the case.
Right.
And so it's again just another challenging position for me to understand why this would be a bad thing. Obviously, it complicates things in different aspects, but
right. Smart Coalition. We need to. People need to visit our website, smartcoalition.com, and they need to do their own research on the smartcoalition.com. Once again, much of what was said today is my opinion. I'm not an attorney. I am not I'm not an economist. Once again, I am a parent. But do your research on this, because when you get to the ballot, it's going to be, verbiage this long.
And I'll link it in here so you can have easy access to reading exactly what it is.
But even when you read it at the poll, it's going to be, wow, that's a lot. But the reality is we want to vote yes, because all we're doing with 12.10 is that we're giving the school districts a say on who and if they should receive a TIF. And we're throwing in that commercial into as residential. So that's
just changing it so that all residential, every place somebody might sleep at night is incorporated.
Correct.
Not other commercial.
Correct.
I'll link
yes
the website as well.
Smart Coalition. So 4.10, yes. 12.10.
If you have questions, she can answer every one of your questions. Now, go to the website. There's a FAQ section there. There's a place on there you can request some more information or contact somebody.
Signs out in the yards also. So if you would like a sign out in your yard, just reach out to smartcoalition.com. You can fill out a form.
.org.
.org. And you can get more information.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Go get out and vote. Get out and vote. Everybody get out and vote. Yes or no? Get out and vote.
Well, I would encourage you to take a step before that and get educated and then go vote, because I see lots of things out there on social media land that
are ugly.
Well, ugly, opinion-based, not fact-based. And
Correct.
I try not to start fights, but I see a lot of people, and I've heard people in person comment about reducing our taxes and whatnot. And, you can say you don't believe the state's website, but according to the state's website, and I'm guessing some other places potentially, 87, I believe it's 87% of school districts in Ohio, the state of Ohio, have a heavier tax burden than Marysville School District. So if you would like lower taxes for schools than Marysville, I don't think there's many places you're going to want to move to that are going to be better. So just things like that I understand that you might feel that taxes are high. The reality of being relative to the rest of the state, it's not very likely that you're going to find a better situation for the taxes for schools. So anyway, jokingly said, go educate yourself so you can make a better decision and obviously informed decision. Well, and I'd say a balanced decision with emotions, morals, ethics, whatever your principles are for the way you operate and make your decisions. But at the same time, you can't ignore facts and information. So also go do that. Anything else?
No. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a wonderful guest. Like we said, if you have any questions or anything, reach out to the website or either of us. We'd be happy to chat with you.
Yeah, smartcoalition.org. Org.
Hopefully I don't have that wrong. That'd be embarrassing. To correct you and then be wrong. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you found that informative. Hopefully you'll share it with somebody else. If you would like to come be my guest and sit over there, talk about whatever you want to talk about, love to have you. If there's anything we can do for you, let us know.
Thanks.